Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Growth Shift. Thanks for joining us. Today, I'm excited to welcome Kevyn Rustici, Chief Operating Officer and VP of Boulter Industrial, an industrial solutions company that specializes in moving, installing, fabricating, and maintaining heavy industrial machinery and equipment for manufacturing and commercial facilities. Kevyn, thank you for joining me today. We're kicking off today by learning about Kevyn's background and then immediately exploring the biggest trends, successes, and challenges he's seeing in the market. Kevyn, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what Boulter Industrial does?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, Jennifer, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always exciting to talk about yourself, right? Everybody loves doing that. But yeah, so today I work at Boulter Industrial Contractors, as you mentioned, but that's not really where my history started. I actually graduated with a degree in biology and thought I was going down the healthcare route. However, my life story or journey or the universe had other plans. So I immediately, after I had gotten a few rejection letters from enough schools, that I knew that that dream was no longer a reality. And I ended up actually taking my first job within a country club to start to build a network. I did not do any internships in college, and I didn't really grow in a family that had a large network that would support me within a future career. So I took a job at a country club shining rich guys' shoes. Did that for a summer. I enjoyed the free golf. I didn't enjoy the work because I was like, I have a college degree. Why am I doing this job? And so a lot of it was trying to figure out, okay, what skills, what do I find interesting, what comes naturally to me, and I got my first opportunity after countless rejection letters for those entry level positions that required 2 to 3 years experience, but I had none. I had the Toshiba Business Solutions, which sold copiers and document management. I started in business development for them, which taught me a lot, right? Taught you about sales, taught you to get to know people, sharpening your soft skills of empathy and understanding and listening and asking good, curious questions to uncover the challenges that businesses face. And after 9 months of cold calling and setting appointments for other people, I said, all right, I think it's time that I actually, I wanted to become a sales rep. So I wrote a business plan, presented it to the CEO, and said, here's all the reasons why I should have my own sales territory. So, for whatever reason, whether it was luck or stupidity, they gave me that opportunity. And then I stayed in sales. I worked there for another 7 years, did all the president's clubs and all that other fun stuff. And then I was ready for something different. Started working for another big name, ADP, and that brought me into the world of process automation, starting to use systems to reduce administrative work, start to really understand business from an operational perspective, and ultimately continue to elevate my craft in sales, which is just people management, right, at the end of the day in its most simplistic form. And then after about 2 years of that, I had enough. And then I went into the world of HR consulting for Gallagher, a big name within the top 100 within the United States. And learned a lot there, experience, and started selling insurance, health related benefits, and things that I never really fully understood, but had been electing for 10 years at that point. So always, every industry that I went into, Jennifer, I always tried to look at it upside down. What was everybody else doing? And what could I do a little bit differently? And a lot of it is, how do you break it down into something that everybody can understand, no matter their reading level or their educational level. And that's really where I took a lot of passion into employee education and communication and design of commission and compensation programs, rewards and recognition. And it was one thing to consult businesses, right, and tell them where their challenges were, and these are the things that they needed to implement. But pretty much in consulting, your work is done at that point. It's really up to them to take that football over the goal line. And I don't know if I felt unfulfilled, but that might be the word, where it was like, well, what is the benefit, and what is the return? So then I took a long-term consulting project here at Boulter. And after 4 months, they just said, hey, would you like to join full time? And at that point, obviously, imposter syndrome starts kicking in. You're like, wait, can I actually do this? But yeah, it's been great. So I started as the chief operating officer, kind of bringing in all of those years of experience, whether it was working for a good manager, a bad manager, organizations that were transparent or held everything close to the chest. Took all the failures that I had on an individual perspective and really tried to create an environment that individuals would thrive. So working in a 133-year-old company, which is Boulter, it had a lot of history. And any change is scary within any business. And so doing smart, logical changes with a human-centered design approach, I had found was really successful to get the buy-in, to get the people to understand why changes were being made, but also that they had a voice, the opportunity to be listened to, valued, and heard to influence those decisions. So it's been amazing. It's been a journey for sure, both on a personal level and a professional level. But the work that we do was something I was never familiar with. So I had worked in white collar my whole career and then came over to a blue collar industry. And there is definitely differences, but some of the differences I really enjoyed. So I'm learning just as much as you are with that brief synopsis of what we do here at Boulter. But in a nutshell, we move large things from point A to point B safely. And then we also can warehouse it in our warehousing space. We have a packaging and crating division, which will crate it and ship it to its final destination. And then we have rigging crews that go out within the field, whether it's production line installation within the manufacturers that you talked about, or heavy electrical equipment, and now into data centers. So with all their heavy equipment as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell my story, a little bit more about Boulter and what I get to do every day.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that story. What shifts or trends in manufacturing and industrial facilities are shaping the kind of work that Boulter Industrial is doing today?
Yeah. So being in Rochester, New York, we had some of the behemoths, right? You had a Xerox, you had Kodak, Bosch Alarm, Century Safe. So these large manufacturers. And what I can honestly say, since those companies have kind of reached their demise, they've downsized dramatically. And that's kind of what I would tell you is what we're seeing in manufacturing today. They're focusing on the things that they do really good. They're not trying to overdo it and offer too much and sacrifice the quality. Our area specifically, for a long time, had a lot of pride and joy in U2ing their employees, but now their minds are starting to get around the idea of outsourcing certain positions within the organization. More specifically, we've evolved and adapted due to the skilled labor shortage by offering our employees as a service to organizations in the form of like a labor loan. It's no different than accounting and finance and HR have kind of been operating in businesses more in that professional space, but now offering it as skilled labor within their facilities, seamlessly integrating within their operations and maintenance teams to really lighten the load, but also help them because they too are really challenged to find the skilled labor that they need with the skills. And everybody's kind of in this reevaluation process. How do we reskill them? How do we get them the skills that they need in order to be a benefit to the business? I mean, a lot of our guys, we have an average of 9.5 years of tenure. So as long as we can find people, we can train them, we can develop them and keep them. That's where we're evolving our services within the manufacturing space. But obviously automation, everybody's talking about how they can start to get robots that show up on time every single day. You know, they can work 24/7. They don't take off holidays. They never call in sick. I've seen more manufacturers push in that direction to try to see what repetitive tasks can be potentially automated. Than doing it and making mistakes. So it's constantly evolving, and we just try to stay ahead of the trends by staying in touch with our customers and having customer reviews to really understand what are your goals and initiatives and how can we help achieve those together.
Let's talk a little bit about the automation and robots. How has technology changed the way you approach rigging, installation, project planning, all of it?
Well, you think about those components, right? The work itself, like the hands-on, you're never, in my opinion, I don't know if a robot is ever going to be able to do the things that we do. I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's a long ways off. But from a repetitive process, when you schedule a job, it's pretty much the same steps. When you go and invoice and bill for a job, it's pretty much the same steps. So we really took a 30,000-foot view and sat down with each individual employee within the office and the field to really understand, well, what are the things that you feel like are repetitive tasks? Like, where are you rekeying information? Because that's really where the light bulb goes off. Is it an API integration within the systems that we utilize, or is it a potential AI agent that can start to do some of these manual tasks on its own? So we've implemented AI from our project managers out in the field, taking notes while they're doing walkthroughs within the field itself, taking their notes of this is what the project is, this is what I think we'll need, this is what the customer wants, these are the door frames, these are the types of docks, and basically as a glorified note taker, synthesizing that information and then putting it into a job ticket, as well as their JHA, which is like their safety ticket. Previously, they were having to type all of that in. And we have our project managers typically come from the field. So they didn't grow up on a computer. They grew up with using their hands and tools. So they're not as quick to type, but they talk the same. They talk at the same speed. So any opportunity that we found for AI to kind of take that off their plate to make them more efficient and focus on the things that really brought them meaning and purpose, getting out with the field crews, preparing the crews, they had more time for all of that. And then from a sales perspective, obviously the outreach, getting people into like the buyer's journey, and then also down to how we invoice. How can we have information passed from one system to another that doesn't require a human to rekey that information? And that's really, to me, looking back on my journey, my experience, all of that prepared me for, okay, coming into an organization, yes, we use technology, and yes, they're probably more ahead than most family operated businesses. But where were the opportunities for automation? And you probably see it doing what you do every day, right? Everybody
Sure.
knows they want AI,
Right.
but if they haven't spent the time to sit down on the individual level that are closest to the work itself, it can be really hard for them to be creative and say, this is where it makes sense.
Right.
So that really was the first, I guess, step in the whole process, was to really find those opportunities through time studies and through literally sitting and watching people do their work. Where was the greatest return on investment and what made the most sense?
Sure. Are there other areas that you are exploring to use AI in addition to the invoicing and the notes and the outreach?
Kind of, we started there. It's definitely there. I see some opportunities from a scheduling perspective as well. Right now, it's aligning of manpower and skills, right, to the specifics of a particular job. And we see opportunities there to speed up that process. But again, it all comes down to the right information in, so you get the right information out. So effective change management comes with a lot of training and education on the front end to make sure that you're feeding it the right information that it would presumably need in order to accomplish that goal or that particular task. So scheduling is the other area that we've started to look at. But yeah, more accounts payable, accounts receivable is probably the next area. As those invoices coming in, having OCR screen scrape basically and grab the information off the invoice and pull that into our ERP system. That would be probably one of those next steps. But again, you can't do everything at once as much as you would want to. I found that the dimmer switch is better than a full light switch with those types of changes. And being in a small business too, you can have a plan, you can implement it, but then you can quickly adjust it within hours or within days. So it's
Sure.
nice that we have that flexibility, except, and I can understand the hesitation for larger organizations with tens of thousands of people where that change isn't as easy and you pretty much have to get it perfect the first time.
Right. Right. Thank you for sharing all that. Can you
Yeah.
share a recent project that really captures what Boulter Industrial does best?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever had Fairlife milk. It's
I
like
think I
a
have.
milk product. Okay.
Yeah.
Their chocolate milk is exceptional. They have these protein shakes as well. But they put in a large manufacturing facility actually right across the street from us. For me, it was my first large scale project that I got to see from a blueprint to a quote to a bid to a install and scheduling perspective. So it was the first real like life cycle that I got to see with a big project. And it took a lot of organization, right? Because we still had day jobs, we still had other customers. Being a small business, how do you make sure you have all the right number of people, right? But you're not overstaffed where then people aren't getting their full 40 hours for the week. So we had enough time to plan. We had enough time to bring in the people that we needed. And it was cool to see it all come together, to see where our team really started to grow. The owner himself was the lead project manager on a project like that. And some of the foremen, they had never worked in that capacity before. And so watching them rise to the challenge and rise to the occasion through proper development on the front end and seeing it all play out was extremely rewarding. Because now when you get to go over there and you get to see the bottles going down this line that was just lines on a piece of paper 6 months ago, it's like, holy cow, like this is really neat. And I think that's the full circle moments that we really try to bring back into what we do every day, because our guys will see certain phases of a project, never really the final product
Mhm.
itself. And they lose sight of it can feel monotonous, right? Or I feel like I'm just investing all my time, energy, and effort into this thing. And they don't really know full circle what that thing actually attributes to. So
Sure.
one other project was that they saw they were recycling hydrochloric acid. Now you hear hydrochloric acid as an employer, and it's like, man, I don't want my guys near that stuff. I don't want them touching it. I don't want them breathing it. And you really protect their safety, obviously, both physical and all the other multi dimensions and holistic wellness. But we rigged and installed and implemented a system that's going to be green for hydrochloric acid so they can recycle it and break it down in components and put it right back into the market. And so when I went to the ribbon cutting event, I was very sure to come back and talk to each individual employee that was on that project, letting them know what their effort, time, and energy went into, and then what's the longevity of that project and how they're making a difference in the world. They'll like it when they're there on a fork truck, giving crane signals and trying to get things in tight places that were never designed to fit in these spaces.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never really thought about it like that. That's really fascinating. What do the clients say when they after seeing your team in action?
Yeah, I think the best quote that I heard all year was the general contractor told Boulter that it couldn't be done, and Boulter told him to hold my beer. So that was really cool to hear, because I think our project managers definitely take a lot of pride in their work. They want to make sure not only the customer satisfaction, but also the crew satisfaction, to make sure that they
Mhm.
had all the tools, all the information that they needed ahead of time, photos, to ensure that they were confident going in to pull off what the expectation was.
Sure.
So I think I've heard it all, but our project managers really assimilate themselves into our customers to really understand their internal process. And we do this, we do machine moves and shop moves and line decommissioning and then recommissioning in a totally different area all the time. But our customers might do it once every 10, 15, 20 years. So bringing a lot of our, let's say, failures, right, or what we learn from a project to a customer, that's extremely valuable. We're saving them time, we're saving those headaches, we're reducing the amount of time that the production line is actually down. And we've provided suggestions too, if the flow doesn't make sense within the production facility. To maximize their square footage, we might look at a blueprint and make other suggestions like, hey, if you move this here, it might make a lot more sense. And then the flow of the product through your facility is a lot easier. So there's that. And then there's on the job where you can have a blueprint. You have the engineers, right, that tell you exactly how it should look. And then you go in to do what the engineers had scoped on their computer and it doesn't work. And there's a fire line that wasn't in the drawing. There was a pole that wasn't in the drawing. I mean, that's really where our foreman can take all of their years of experience and make those decisions on the fly instead of leaving it in the customer's lap for them to figure out.
Sure.
So they'll provide suggestions. So again, they're not overpaying for the general contractors or the other industrial contractors that might be on site. So we really do our best to put our butts in the same seats as our customers and ensure their satisfaction by thinking through a project from start to finish.
Awesome. What would you say is something that's working really well for Boulter Industrial right now?
What's the one thing I would say? I would say talent pipeline, right? When I came into the organization, we had guys that building that pipeline of individuals that had potential, that knew you would have to make a time investment. Our skills, right, take 1 to 2 years for someone to grasp. So turnover for us is extremely costly. Not like a cashier at any place, not to discredit what they do, but their training is far shorter. They can learn that in a week or two. And so when we're really looking at evaluating talent, we're going down as far as like the 10th grade to start to talk about skilled labor, right? And the opportunities and the earning potential. And before college becomes the ever focus, I always jokingly say I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I graduated, until I got that life experience. But I would say building our talent pipeline, we reiterated our internship program this year to make it a hands-on experience, to expose them to all areas of the business. So then the individual can start to determine, hey, I like this, or I can't stand that, to ensure that they know what they're getting into, but also give them the opportunity to align their strengths and some of their gifts that they have as to where it makes the most sense within our business, and then give them the tools, the training, and the development they need in order to be successful. So we've taken that customer experience that we've made us who we are over 133 years, and then just recreated that from an individual employee experience, from onboarding to benefits planning to retirement planning, and making sure that we're arming them with the skills, not only at Boulter, but also life skills to make them more successful both at work and at home. So teaching them some of the fundamental building blocks over retirement, how to save, making smarter decisions with your money, and how to dig yourself out of credit card debt. So we've really wrapped around the services around our employees, because we know if they have a positive experience and they're checking off multiple buckets within that holistic wellness, that we're going to get a better return on our investment.
Absolutely. So often I hear the opposite of that as not being one of the things that's working well for a company, but as something that a company is struggling with. So it sounds like you guys are doing it right. On the flip side of that, what's one of the biggest challenges your team is navigating right now?
Getting people to do what they should do. No, that's always one of the challenges. I think you have a lot of different expectations, and I think the more that it doesn't seem like a big deal. So we try to do as many swaps as possible. So coming up in the new year, we'll have this day in the shoes of. And so bringing field employees into the office and bringing the office out into the field, because sometimes when you get into the day to day, you don't realize what if you miss something, how much work it creates for somebody else down the line. And we get buried in these tasks and these expectations of deadlines, right? And things get missed, not realizing that it's creating more work for somebody else. So with that automation and really understanding, okay, what's taking our field crews time, what's taking our admin team time, we found those opportunities where we can make it easier, whether it's a checklist, whether it's some of these mental reminders for all the different learning styles, to make sure that we get the right information out, so then we can hit the right information when we go and invoice our customer. So we're looking at invoicing churn and all that other stuff. And foreman, right? You would tell them, hey, your job is to drive this job, but now we're opening their eyes to how else they impact the business outside of just what they're doing within the day.
Sure. Where do you see Boulter Industrial heading in the next 1 to 3 years?
It's exciting. It really is. We're expanding within the geographical region. We've pinpointed some areas within up in New York, right, where it makes a lot of sense, whether there's lack of competition in certain areas, or we found that our pricing is competitive within a particular market. And then we're evolving and adapting, like we talked about with the automation side of it. So starting to get some of our employees trained on robots, ASRS systems. So now taking some of the mechanical skills that we have and getting them cross-trained in electrical. We foresee the appetite for that labor loan program to only increase. So we see more of our employees working alongside other employees within other businesses, which will bring its own challenges. But we see a lot of growth with the OEM market, so directly with the manufacturers, right, to create these rigging partnerships, which should bring us all up and down the East Coast and then even out west sometimes. And where we also are seeing a lot of growth is that crating and packaging. So we're kind of like the micro Amazon of industrial contracting, right? You can store it, you can ship it, we can deliver, we can install it. Really giving our customers kind of only one throat to choke within the life cycle of that piece of equipment or that conveyor system, whatever it might be, reducing the headaches for the end user. So if they have one person that they can hold accountable to the schedule, it makes their lives a lot easier when it comes to managing the project scope that they have on the customer level. So growth, we're up by 40% this year, and we hope to continue to see that trend increase into next year and there forward. So, but thankfully we stay in touch with our customer base. So I think that in the field and boots on the ground and getting that feedback from the field, that's created some of the other additional revenue stream opportunities that we've identified and now are starting to systematize and strategize as to how do we market this? How do we sell it? How do we arm our project managers with the talk tracks to proactively start to bring up some of these things in conversations?
Yeah, that's fantastic. What would you say is a lesson you've learned through your career or with Boulter that you wish you knew earlier?
To pick one, I would say I always start with self podcasts, and it's all focused on leadership. And I was always amazed by the leaders that knew who they were, loved who they were, accepted who they were, tended to be the best leaders, right? They weren't worried about micromanagement. They weren't worried about passive aggressive comments because they tended to almost have this armor that they wore. What was happening externally never flustered what was going on internally. So I have found the more investments that I make in myself and really making sure I carve out enough time for my mental health, my physical health, that's when I'm my best and that's when I can give my best to others. And I think then you go into the day a little bit more intentional by setting your intention before the day even starts or that meeting even starts. And it allows you to listen differently, it allows you to show up a little bit differently. You're not relying on the external world to prove or to tell you what you're worth. And that to me, it allows me to admit what I know and also admit what I don't know, creating that high trust, love-based environment. And you really get to see other people shine too, and simply share your story as a testimony to them, letting them know they're not alone and to help them achieve their goals. But also to be that, I think that I always needed somebody to see what I couldn't even see in myself. So if seeing their potential and they can't even see it in themselves, sometimes that's the greatest gift that you can give these individuals. So I would say knowing self, loving self, and accepting self has been one of the greatest lessons in leadership, because I think it's a cascading domino effect in all the other areas that, hey, you have to have empathy, and there's emotional intelligence training, and there's all these things now. But if you haven't admitted what your own shortcomings are and even aware of what those are you really going to even listen into those trainings that your employer is making all this investment in? Probably not, right? It might sound like nails on a chalkboard, but until you really look at yourself in the mirror and hold that mirror up and hold yourself accountable and be honest with yourself, I was amazed by how many lies my mind told me, both good and bad. It's and when you have your head on straight and you know who you are, that's probably made me a more effective leader and communicator and a greater asset to the business.
That's great advice. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for sharing your insights. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about Boulter Industrial?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one, we have a YouTube channel for Boulter. Our marketing team, a team of one, she does a phenomenal job. So anytime anybody says, what's rigging? I always say, hey, do you have a computer? Do you have your phone? And check out our YouTube channel. You get to see a little bit more about what we discussed today. And then for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn. I try to share kind of my journey, the lessons, both good and bad, from leadership, share from an intimate and transparent and vulnerable space. Like I said, we also have a podcast. I have Time Out with Leaders that I do with my buddy Tyler. So if you're interested in hearing other people's stories and taking one or two nuggets of wisdom from them and applying it in your own world, give the show a listen as well.
Fantastic. Kevin, thanks so much for joining me today. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to The Growth Shift.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for the opportunity. This was fun.